Welcome to Ripple Effect Connection. I'm your host, Christy Hugick. Throughout my own journey, I've been blessed to form deep connections with incredible souls who've enriched my life with their insights. Today, I'm excited to extend these connections to you, bridging the gap between impactful messages and inspiring messengers. On this podcast, with the help of my guests, we're set to explore a diverse range of topics, delving into nutrition, fitness, holistic health, and the power of mindset. Our goal is to ignite transformative discussions that create a ripple effect of positive change in your life and the lives of others. Our inaugural guest has a message that every person can relate to. Robyn Barnhardt is a freelance writer, artist, and a true life enthusiast. She is also a talented author and just happens to be one of my good friends. Robyn joins us to share insights from her book, See Life Through Rose-Colored Glasses. It addresses a topic currently permeating our society, limiting beliefs. These beliefs and barriers we put up can stop us from realizing our true potential and the world around us. Chances are you know someone who does this, or you've done it yourself, and I'm raising my hand. I've been there. Robyn's book is also about something we will talk about countless times on this podcast: empowerment. She has a unique knack for connecting to people and a brilliant way of delivering an essential message. It will inspire growth and a positive change for all of you. I know she shares the goal of wanting the wisdom and knowledge she's gathered to be passed along to others. She also just happens to live in one of my favorite places on the planet, St. Simon's Island, Georgia. Right, Robyn. Well, here we are.
Hi.
We get to do this in person.
I'm so glad.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you.
I appreciate you taking the time out to join me for this. And I've been looking forward to it for a long time. I'm glad we got together in person. As I said to Randy yesterday, I'm not dumb. If I'm going to do a podcast and I have friends in Sea Island that I can take advantage of, why wouldn't I do it on location in a beautiful place?
Business and pleasure.
That's right. So let's start with your background. How did you get where you are today?
Well, that's a
huge
a loaded question. Yes. As far as the book is concerned, it's just life experience. The whole process of writing the book was just me trying to figure out something for me. So it wasn't like I would set out to write a self-help book. I don't have a background in therapy or psychology. I have an art background. So it's not, it was just me trying to figure me out. I wrote the book for me to read, actually, because it was just about me figuring out something for me. So the art kind of came into it too, because I did the quote pages and that kind of thing. And so I got to play with that. But I'm just a very visual person. I wanted me to be able to see it laid out in steps and for me.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get into this, of course, but I think all of us who get into this space have gone through something ourselves. We're trying to figure it out too.
Well, everybody is. Totally, everybody is. And what I figured out for me may not be what works for you. But I know me figuring out me was, there's not an original idea in this book. It's a collection of what I've, gleaned from other people. So when I put my stuff together, if there's just one thing in there that resonates with somebody else, that's great. But that's how I came up with my deal. I've always been super fascinated with biographies and how other people, how they did it, whether I want to emulate that or not. But everybody's just trying to figure out life, So I'm always struck by the fact that no matter what anybody does or their background is or how much they've accomplished, we all just want love and connection and to feel worthy. And how do you go about getting that? How do you go about finding that?
100%. And then to just let people know, where you grew up and kind of, you already established, you live here in St. Simon's Island. Island is a big part of your life, but just, where you grew up and what maybe a couple little steps in there that maybe helped transform to get you where you are today.
Well, I kind of like my background of growing up. I grew up in the South. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. And I say that I grew up in a family long on love and affection and short on money and stability. So as an oldest child, a perfectionist, when you don't have a real stable home environment, my parents divorced, my mom had an alcohol issue, just life, nothing super traumatic, but the way I chose to deal with it was to become, a perfectionist, a neat freak, tried to control the things I could control. And that worked for me, for a long time. That helps you navigate your space and do what you can do to feel that safety or stability that you're looking for. But in the long run, you're trying to control things outside of you, and you're never going to be able to do that. So there's my background. Then the man I marry is, my husband very well. He's, his personality is the bull in my china shop, So
you're kind of opposite.
Oh, completely
this
opposite.
Is the total opposite.
Completely. Yes. And very similar, a dynamic, I want my ducks in a row, and his ducks are flying all over the place on purpose, So, he was a constant challenge, our personalities, and, we've been married a long time and things have changed and shifted or whatever. But I truly believe your soulmate is not somebody who kisses your ass. Your soulmate is the person who makes you examine and figure it out. And had I married somebody that was just the least bit compliant, that, I could continue this thing of if I kept the house straight enough, whatever, stayed on schedule, I never would have gone trying to figure out anything for me. That would have been enough for me. So the fact that, I was with this person who challenged me on, at every turn in the road, I had to get to the point where, okay, I've got to figure out, I can't control him. I can't control the world, what's going on. I got to figure out how to find peace here. And the switch of that, that's where the rose-colored glasses, the perception, the example of using the glasses or the lens to view where you are and to figure that out. That's kind of how that came into play. So,
yeah.
So the book is dedicated to him.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's great. It's great. And I wonder too, and I know you touched on this also about biographies, kind of inspiring you and things like that. Because I always think that, authors always have books that have inspired you. So what are some of those books that maybe inspired you along the way?
Well, so many, I couldn't even begin to tell you, but Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, because right now, in this moment is really the only thing that you have any power over. What's happened has happened. It's gone. It's over. Wasted energy. And if you have anxiety or fear about the future, it may or may not even happen. And the fact that you're so focused on what you don't want, you may actually even cause that to come to be, because what you focus on is what you're going to attract. So if you can figure out how to stay in the moment and deal with what you have in the moment, that puts you way ahead of the game right there. And then the other book was Transcending the Levels of Consciousness by David Hawkins.
Okay.
Because I figured out, that helped me to see that where you are and how you feel are indications of where you are on the emotional scale, as how connected you are to universal consciousness, to your spirit self. When you are, in those lower vibrations like shame and guilt, and you don't have anything, you're disconnected. You can't get any guidance. You can't figure it out from there. You have to be in those higher vibrations to be able to get the intuition and the inspiration to know how to get out of where you are. And as long as you're focused on where you are, so just the correlation, understanding the correlation that what you focus on, what you choose to focus on in your choices, that was huge for me. The choices that you make are the real indicators of how you feel. And ultimately, that's how your life experience it goes from there.
Yeah. And it's like when it's weird, it's funny how I always feel like there's so many God winks in life.
Oh, yeah.
And everything you wrote in your book and you're talking about, I had gone through. And when I started to read your book, I was like, it almost for me was like an affirmation that, yes, this is a thing. This is what I went through. Because I remember when I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, like my first thought was, okay, what can I do?
Right.
Okay. Sure. Okay. I have this disease. It's not going away.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that I can control?
Right.
And that's just, how I thought every day. It's my nutrition. It's my sleep. It's my,
Mm-hmm.
it's my mindset and how I would think. And I had an influential book in my life, was John Gordon's Energy Bus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I look back and how these little things are just placed in life
Mm-hmm.
that just come about at the right time. And what's going to happen is someone's going to listen to this.
And maybe they'll get a little breadcrumb
Exactly.
for them on the path. I mean, it's all just picking up. It's like I kind of compare it to like a bird building a nest. You just get a little here, a little here, a little here, and you're just forming your foundation for what works for you. And so, yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah. And I mean, we do that, as a health coach at the clinic that I work for. I mean, we do that. I mean, there's individuality and everything, but you're gleaning pieces of things and you're putting it together for you. It's not like you can say one universal way people should eat.
No.
There's not one universal way people should think. And I think that if someone were to read your book, there's no way you would read the book and not get something out of it for yourself, whether it's one thing or 10 things.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, it made me reflect.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of reflection on my journey. So what was the moment where you knew you wanted to write a book?
Well, it was kind of crazy. Like I said, I'm collecting quotes, passages, I'm reading things in books, and I just kind of wanted it in one place because this isn't something that you figure out and you're like, okay, I've got it. This is an in the moment recalibration of being conscious and mindful of where you are and your frame of mind. So it was something I wanted to be reminded of. So I'm just trying to put pieces together and just for my little portfolio thing. So when I started doing it though, it's the quotes and things started to fall into categories. I noticed that they just kind of naturally did. So I started organizing the different steps that I have outlined in the book. I'm a writer. I have an art background. I was just trying to connect the dots for me. But as I was doing it, a book started to appear and I would work on it and I would get frustrated and I'd be like, nobody is making me write a book. I mean, I don't have to do this. And I would put it away. And then I could not leave it alone. It just kept
calling.
I just kept working on it. And it was almost like, I had no clue really initially that's what it was going to be. But as I started to do it, like you said, you're just picking up the breadcrumbs. As I started to do it, it just started to form. And I just had to see it in completion. I just had to see it for me. Like if I read the book, got it published and nobody ever read it but me, I'd be thrilled with it.
Right. It's just something you did for you.
Yeah.
And that you have to do it. Yes, you want to help people,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have to do it for you first.
Yeah.
To make it even resonate with other people. And so how would you describe kind of how you laid the book out? So think about someone who hasn't read it yet and who might be wanting to read this. How would you describe, because I just found so many principles that you incorporated in it.
Mm-hmm.
I love quotes, all of that. It was wonderful. So how would you kind of describe how the book is shaped and laid out?
Well, like I said, it started with quotes and inspiration from other writers and people in general. I mean, there are quotes from, cartoon characters to Steve Jobs to, Albert Einstein in there. So there's, I mean, that's a small percentage of what I had. But when I started to lay out the quotes, like I said, they just started to fall into these categories. So there were quotes that pertain to perspective is one of the sections of the book. Perspective is basically just recognizing what you're looking at, what you're focused on. What is it? What are you?
I liked how you used words that you can view that word two different ways.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. Perspective is the angle you choose to view it from. a choice. Realization, I think, was the next one. Then that part is understanding what that means. So that pertains more to the emotional scale and what the higher, when you're feeling love and joy and, euphoria, how that means you're connected, that you are connected to the greater good when you feel those emotions. I think the third one is shadow, because you don't always feel that, and you're not supposed to feel it all the time. Mm-hmm. That is where the laws came into play for me, because I think most of us are so, I don't know, so disillusioned because things don't go our way all the time. And, it's not supposed to. That wouldn't even be any fun. If it did,
it wouldn't learn anything.
Well, the thing about when I started, it was like when I first became of like spiritual laws, I think was with like when the law of attraction was a big deal, like when The Secret came out. And, we all made a vision board, and, when we didn't win the lottery, like in a month, we're like, well, that shit does not work. Well, that's really, there's so much more to it than that. It definitely works, because it just works on whatever you're focused on. You will, you tend to attract what you're looking for. So, but it's not just the law of attraction, it's the law of vibration, similar. Like, that's why you can't get love if you're, a frame of mind of hate. You just can't get there from there. So, law of vibration, law of contrast, law of polarity, everything's exists in duality. You can't even know what, hot feels like if you don't know what cold feels like. So you have to have the highs and lows of life for it to have any depth or meaning. I mean, if it was just, woohoo, great all the time, then that would lose its meaning too. I mean, right. that would be boring. It wouldn't have any meaning at all. So when I started to pick up on the fact that, life is life, that's just what you're going to get, then you get to choose how you want to feel about it. So that's what shadow is about. Shadow is understanding that, life's going to suck sometime. You're going to get your turn. And when that happens, what do you do about it? Then after shadow is release. Because, you're going to be where you don't want to be. You're going to get MS. You're going to have things you don't want to hear. But what do you do with that? You have to figure out a way to look at it that makes it okay for you to move beyond it, for you to be able to work with it and deal with it. As long as you push against what you don't want, you hold it in your vibration.
Yep.
As long as fighting against something, saying no to it, still holds it in your vibration because you're giving it your attention. So release is making peace with what you've got to deal with. Once you've done that, then vision is focusing on the part that you do want. Since everything exists in duality, you have MS, that's down here on this scale. Well, health and, well-being are over here. Well, let's not concentrate on the fact of our limitations. Focus on what we can do. It's just a shift in consciousness, and it's so subtle.
It's powerful.
But hugely powerful when you can wrap your head around it.
Yeah.
Because it is very empowering to know that you can do that in any situation.
Yeah. And we try to get, and that's what I always find with patients and clients is you have to envision yourself being what you want to be before you can get there.
Right.
And I have seen a lot of people dealing with disease because I'm seeing patients on a day-to-day basis that have been chronically sick for a long time. And they just trying to make them understand how powerful the mind is and that you do have the power to change it. But if you don't have a vision, it's not.
And I'm not saying it's easy. If you had chronic pain for years and years, it's hard to think about anything else. But it's not. I'm not saying this is like, don't look at that. Look at this. I am saying that, but I just want you to understand that it's not that it's an easy thing to do. But when you understand that, even in a day with chronic pain, there has to be something, even if it's just one little thing that you can focus on. Focus on that. Just do what you can with what you have, where you are. That's all you can do.
And small wins. Sometimes people are looking just at the big picture, but they miss those little small wins. We see patients like that all the time. They have an overarching issue that maybe the big issue they come to you with is maybe not quite healing quick,
but they miss all these other things that are getting
That
better
yes.
because they only focus on that,
Yes.
right? So that's the same thing. So we try to shift it. What's next?
And then there's balance because, like I said, this isn't something that you like, okay, I read that. I've got it. I've got it. Balance is knowing that this is a fluctuating state of being. You're going to bump up against stuff you don't want. You're going to, you're not as conscious of it when things are going your way because it's not a problem. But it's also important to be conscious of it when things are going on your way, to be grateful and appreciate where you are, because that's not going to last forever either. So it's just mindfulness. It's just being aware, but understanding when you do spiral down and go off the deep end or down the rabbit hole, that's part of it too. And be kind to yourself. It's just balance is just, it's never going to be over. You're always going to have new things that's just life. That's one of the laws too. It's ever evolving. So understand that it's okay. Life is not a riddle to be solved. It is to be lived. So you're just trying to find the most peace that you can find in any given situation. And then being kind to yourself when you have trouble finding that.
I think something too that we touched on there, but that's rooted in the book, is just the idea about limiting beliefs. You know, just give some examples for some folks who may not understand or recognize that they do have limiting beliefs. What are some of these that can hold people back?
Well, that's part of, like, with the book. I think that's where most of us have a problem is the recognition of the habits that we have that are detrimental, and we don't even realize it. Because it's not just saying I can't. It's saying I don't like, I hate, anytime you are focused on the end of the spectrum you don't want, you are cutting yourself off from moving beyond it. You're holding yourself there. So, what I think I don't like, I hate, any of those beliefs.
For our patients, a lot of times it's I'm sick versus I'm healing.
Exactly. It's just a subtle shift in the way you choose to view it. So, I mean, that's a huge part of it, is just recognizing habits that you have. And I mean, I do it all the time now. I'll catch myself, off on a tangent. I'm like, this isn't making me feel good. What? Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's reset. This isn't good,
But it's your awareness.
Exactly.
That makes it. It's not that you're not going to do these things.
No.
It's that you have the awareness almost to catch yourself, say to yourself, okay, let me quickly shift this and reframe it. Just like, we tell patients a gratitude practice every day. Like, try being in a bad mood when you're thinking about what you're grateful for.
Right.
You almost can't, and so that I think is a big deal. But limiting beliefs seems to permeate.
Yeah.
In a lot of places.
And I'll also say this too, as far as the limit, being limited or whatever. When you're so focused on what everybody else is doing, what their accomplishments are, like I think we had talked one time about social media and the whole thing. It's just, you do you figure out you. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Whatever they're doing, you may or may not like it. And it's important to understand when you don't like something as well. It's important to know what you don't want. Yeah. But when you don't want it or you don't like it, instead of pushing against it, see if you can try to focus on the solution or what you can do in the space that you have to make change, which is you. What can you do to make a positive difference?
I think that's big, especially in this world, because we are in this social media world.
Yeah.
That is a big deal because people have to deal with this all the time. We were talking earlier about quotes. I love this quote. Your perspective will either become your prison or your passport. So I know we talked about perspective, but anyone who knows me knows I love a good quote, and your book is filled with them. And so as I'm reading it, I'm finding quotes and I'm writing them in my phone. Those quotes, I know you mentioned where some of them came from, but some of them, even the unknowns, where did you get some of those? And if you had to pick a couple, it's probably like asking you to pick between your children.
Right.
But what are a couple of your favorites?
I mean, they came from everywhere. It might be just listening to a Jim Carrey do a speech, or, Pinterest is a big thing. I know one thing about the quotes, when Pinterest first came out, I was kind of, going through some stuff, and you can kind of go down a dark rabbit hole. So then there are these quotes that have got like, fuck you or whatever. So I had a collection of those as well. But then I started to notice when I would reflect on those, that didn't really make me feel better. I needed the inspiration. So I started to collect the ones that seemed to pull you out of beyond that. And so, it'd be Pinterest or whatever. But when I got a quote that made me think, or just kind of jolted my conscious, my perception of what I was dealing with, I just started to collect them. And as far as a favorite, I mean, they're all favorites, or I wouldn't have collected them. But I think one that has been, it's not even in the book, but I think one that has been, and maybe a little prelude to the next book, because I've already, want to do something with something else. But it is, there are always going to be people who can't see your worth. Don't let it be you. Mm-hmm. Mel Robbins, I think, is the one who said that. But, like you said, with social media or whatever, comparing yourself to other people, there are going to be people who will never get you. There are going to be people that maybe don't find anything in my book, and that's okay too. You have to be okay with if they never see it, your worth, if they never get it, mm-hmm. That's got to be okay with you.
Right.
As long as you know what you're doing and you feel like you have self-worth, that's really all that matters. So that is very empowering when you can realize that, like, take it or leave it. You don't like it. Okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be personal to me.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's, I think that's such a big message, mm-hmm. In this day and age. So I think it's an important one.
Especially for women, I think.
I think so too. And, you see all the negatives. I think there are a lot of positives about social media.
Oh, totally. I do too.
I just try to stay away from the things that energy doesn't match mine.
And that's the secret right there. There is stuff, social media, whatever, the way somebody looks at you in the supermarket. But if it doesn't resonate with you, walk away.
Yeah.
Shut it off. Get off that website. Do whatever. It doesn't have to have power over you unless you give it the power.
Right. You talk about the 12 laws, universal laws in the book. So I want to specifically maybe narrow in on the law of vibration. And I know we've talked about that a little bit, but how does it influence the way you think and what you wrote?
Like we kind of touched on before, the law of vibration basically says that, everything is made of energy, and everything, thoughts, ideas, trees, everything is made up of energetic matter. Matter that vibrates at a similar vibration will be attracted to itself. So I think the example I use in the book is like oil and water. They're both properties that have very different vibrations, and if you can shake them up, but eventually they move to apart. They don't mesh. He actually, the emotional scale, he used vibration to make up the scale. I mean, it's not like he made it up. I don't know exactly how to say that, but the high love and joy and all that, that's a higher vibration. So when, like hippies used to say in the 60s, that's, low vibe, high, there's something to that. So the higher vibration. So when I realized that, like we were saying, you can't get to love from hate. It's very different. It's a different vibration, just like oil and water. So the emotions that you're looking for, you're wanting to be on that higher end of the scale because it feels better. And I know one of your big things with your podcast is the why of everything. Why do we do what we do? And that's also, for me, the bottom line reason we do anything is we want to feel better. We want to be happy. We want to have peace. You either want a lot of money because you want safety and security. You think that will make you feel better. You want love because you think that's going to make you feel worthy, make you feel, you want it, but whatever you want is to feel better. So that's the higher end of those, of the emotional scale. So do whatever it takes. That's the point. You just do what it takes to get there, to get to those higher vibrations.
Yeah, I love that. I love all the laws, and it just made so much sense incorporating them into the book. And, we talked about this earlier. No one takes part in these types of books or does the types of things that we're talking about, or like me, becomes a health coach without having been the one who needed help at some point. So I know you touched on it, but whatever you're comfortable sharing, but was there a point you discovered, like, I need to change this thought process? Were you looking to change an experience that you were going through?
Well, I kind of touched on like my relationship with Mac, earlier, but this has been some years ago, but we were, very different personalities, very different. And like I said, he's the bull in my china shop. And, that was doable. We didn't have kids for 11 years. Then you get kids in the mix, and, then we've got their schedules and this and, whatever. And my coping mechanism would be the more things feel out of hand, the more structured and anal retentive I get about things. That's just how I roll. And his way was to push all those buttons, So we really had gotten into this really unhealthy way of communicating and, lots of tension, lots of, we'd just have these long drawn out conversations over the tone of his voice and blah, blah, blah. And we can't do this and that hurt my feelings and blah, blah, on and on and on. And so I grew up, my parents divorced, and that was one thing I did not want for my kids. So, I suggested we go to marriage counseling, which we did. But when we go to marriage counseling, because confidentially, I thought it was time to bring in a third party to explain to him why he was wrong. Because
that never works in counseling.
So what I was told, and so was he, is that, he's who he is, I'm who I am. We could compromise, but you're not going to change that. We can't change this person. She's not going to tell him something. He's going to start acting the way I think he needs to act. So when we left there, I just felt like the very thing I don't want is getting ready to happen. Like, there is no way I'm going to keep letting him push my letting him. That's telling. Push my buttons I'm done. This is it for me. So, but when I made that decision, it was like I had been holding a beach ball under the water and it just popped up. So it's like this thing that I had been fighting against, like, you need to do this, and him telling me too, but the things we weren't happy about with each other, just, seeing it for what it was. Like, yeah, this is what it is. Recognizing that was a huge sense of relief. That was the first thing. So I'm like, okay, we'll get a divorce. Well, what will that look like? And when I started to look at what that would look like, I thought, well, we've been married forever. We've grown up together. We've lost our parents together. We struggled to have children and ultimately had 2 children together. He's somebody I like and respect. I would want to be his friend even if we're not a couple. So when I started to look at the things I liked and realized, whether we have a piece of paper saying we're married or not is really irrelevant. We're always going to be family. It completely took the pressure off the situation. And I saw how just that shift in the way I was looking, rather than what I didn't like about what was going on, I started to recognize the positives. And not that we walked away from that and now we get along great. That is not the case either. But, we're constantly redefining our relationship. It's still a work in progress, but the way I choose to feel about it is up to me. So that was the moment that I was like, just that small shift in the way I was looking at it completely changed, not just the way I felt about it, but the situation. Yeah. Because we started to appreciate things instead of being critical of things. That's the funny thing too, is you're attracted to people because they're so different from you.
It's true.
And then you get in the relationship and you're pissed off because they don't react to everything like you would.
It's true.
But it's such a learning experience.
100%.
Yeah.
And like, I always feel like that person's put there for a reason, because
Yeah.
you need to work on this. And so, I know even with my husband, like there were so many things that he's good at that I'm not, that I'd like to be good at.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of learning from him.
Yeah.
There's so many things. And again, like the God wink of, he came about in my life when he did. Could I have dealt with things as well as I did if that person
If he had not been a part of your life?
He had not been a part of that. So, and I know you kind of just answered the next question, but I want to share with everyone that, the choice thing is a big deal to me. And that's what I learned working with my energy healer was the ability to choose. And I know she's always talking about it on social media, and Dr. Janine Kraft, she's going to be on my podcast also. And she's been so influential with me. But I want to tell people, you had given me your book and you wrote in my book when you gave it to me, you are always choose happy. And so the second, without even reading a page of your book, you wrote that. I saw the title of the book and I knew that this book was going to resonate with me. So your vision and your ability to convey to people how important choice is, I think cannot be understated. Like we could literally do an entire podcast on just having the ability to choose everything.
Exactly.
So you can choose. I felt like when I was reading the book, like you were talking to me, and I could hear you talking to me.
Everybody.
Just like everyone, I'm loving that. That's the greatest thing about podcasts is they can hear your voice. And now if they do hear read your book, they're going to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And so, you and I have had so many conversations. I think you're like me. Gretchen Rubin has her 4 tendencies. And I think you and I would be upholders a lot because we're looking at, trying to keep things in a nice tight bow and having the control.
That's how I like it.
It's written in the upholder tone. So I can relate to that. Yeah. So in your mind, what's the vibe? What's the vibe of the book and how you communicate? See, for me, it's an upholder tone. So,
well, definitely. I mean, it's so funny because everybody says that knows me, that reads it. They're like, I could just hear you talking in my head. And my son even, which is really funny because, I'm figuring this stuff out. I'm spouting this stuff off, to my kids or whatever. And, my son would be, like when he was in high school or whatever, I would say something. He'd say, I'm not really in the mood for your Zen shit right now, So I wrote the book. He read the book and he said, I am really impressed. And I said, you are? And he goes, that was really well done. It was very well written. I said, well, what do you think I've been talking about all this time? Like you've been here the whole time. And he said, well, it was really funny. Like when I would give him advice or whatever, he said, I always felt like I was doing something that I shouldn't be doing. I was doing something wrong. When I read it, when you wrote the book, it's more generally like this is beneficial if everybody, this is something that would, and which was really strange. Sometimes when you're trying to help somebody or do something, you don't really know how it's being taken. But he said my favorite part was when I was reading it was that I could hear you talking in my head. And he said the best thing about it was when I got tired of hearing it, I could just close that book.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
But the tone is just as if we were having a conversation. And I tried to write it in several different ways. And at the end of the day, that was the only way I could write it.
Yeah. The other thing about it that I think, which is another thing that triggered me because of my work with Dr. Kraft, it takes the judgment out of everything. There is no right. There is no wrong. It just is. And so I felt that. So would you say that that's?
I think that was the biggest lesson for me too, being a people pleaser and a box ticker or whatever. The fact that everything is so gray, it's never an absolute. And the freedom in that, and the freedom for me to figure that out for me, and you to figure that out for you. For somebody who is trying very hard to please everybody and to do that, to get that you really don't have to. That's a big deal. And I hope that did come across in the book because that was one of the biggest lessons for me is that it's okay. We've all got crazy. Just figure out you're crazy and rock it. I mean,
Yeah.
but there is no normal. There's no normal.
Right.
Just figure out what you're working with and make it work for you.
You know, and you and I are so similar too in that being the upholders. Like, that's why I think the book deeply resonated with me. It was like, I feel like, you know, it was affirming what I went through because that's where I was. I grew up in sports. Everything is judgment.
Right.
Good play, bad play, good shot, bad
you
shot.
You lose.
Win,
very
lose.
Absolute. Yeah.
All the ends of the spectrum. And you had to get rid of that. And that validation coming from outside performances, whether it was good or bad. And that's hard to lose. And so when we are talking to patients about it, it is that they'll say, you know, they have a specific protocol they're following. And if they have something off of it, they'll say, I was bad.
Right.
Or I had some bad foods. It's not the food is good or the food is bad. It is which foods are right for you. Right. And so that's like a small, you know, microcosm of what we're trying to do overall. Getting rid of judgment is a big deal. Having choice is a big deal. So that's why we're talking today, because I think your message, like I to the point now where I would, when I include a gift package with my patients, have a copy of your book.
Oh, thank you.
Because I think it's so powerful. So the curious thing to me is always, I don't know if you've had anybody come along like this. If they're not upholders and they're, say, rebels, and you know, you don't have to know the Gretchen Rubin 4 tendencies to know this, but upholders respond to inner and outer expectations. So that's you and I. Right. We're trying to please other people, but we're also trying to live up to our own standards and check the boxes.
And usually that's higher than what anybody else asks of us.
That's correct.
As well.
Way higher. Yeah. And so we're the easy ones to coach, to be honest. If I have a client,
we want to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah. But there are rebels. So I wonder if you had anybody from another personality type who said something like, sometimes rebels don't respond, or they might just be a little more resistant to, or being so receptive to taking in that message.
I think it equally applies to that aspect as well, because it's saying it's okay to screw it up. That's part of the process too. So, and that's, you know, it's like nothing's really ever going wrong. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're doing it's just putting you on the path. Like, you know, it's like you look back at things in your life and things you really wanted and it didn't work out. And then you look back and you're like, thank God that didn't work out, because that would not have been, you know. So when you have somebody who's always pushing boundaries, like Matt, like my husband,
he's a rebel.
He's totally a rebel. And, but I think the book equally is attractive to him too, because it gives him permission. He's not wrong for doing what he feels like, what is his tendency.
Right. You had to learn that it's okay for him to be
absolutely. And that's totally part of who he is. And I get, you know, and I've probably become more so a rebel in him, you know, it's because it's a balance.
You can get
a balance.
Yeah.
So totally. I mean, when I wrote the book, I mean, I used the word motherfucker in it. And that, you know, I'm the one, and actually if my dad were still living, that probably would not be in the book. But there was a part of me that I'm like, you know, that's going to ruffle some feathers. Aunt Helen's going to be not happy about that at all. But, you know, there was a part of me in doing the book that I'm like, I'm just going to tell it. I'm just going to do it. People aren't going to like it. They'll like it. They won't like it. Whatever. And that was huge too. So I think it's like, it's permission. It's okay. Wherever you are, it's okay. And that's
probably why your book will resonate with other tendencies and other personality types, because you've had to deal with this. So to me, the two extremes are upholders and rebels.
And we're all on there at some point at any given time.
And that's what people sometimes don't understand about the 4 tendencies. Yes, you are predominantly one over another. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Right.
But you can be doing the other tendencies at times. It doesn't mean you never do that.
Yeah.
I think also too, in the book, you had a lot of stories. And like I always said, and I know people have told you this before, but the story about your mom really resonates with me. And I know it resonated with a lot of people. Is that your favorite story in the book?
That's the one I get the most comments about. There's a part in the book where I talk about that we're all part of universal energy, and that you have at any time the ability to hook into that, to receive guidance or intuition. And that's the higher, end of the emotional scale. And that since energy is neither created nor destroyed, your energetic spirit just changes form. So who you are, we're so judgmental of this, but that's, just a shell of who you are. So my mother passed away in 2013. She was a very spiritual person as well as religious. I think they're two completely different things. But she was a very spiritual person as well. But when she died, she had a lot of health issues over her life. And she was kind of at a point, she was fairly young, but she was at a point where she was going to have a surgery that she, like probably 97% she could not survive the surgery. But she couldn't live without the surgery. So going into the surgery, we knew she probably would not survive it. So the week before the surgery, and she was cool with it. She was like, I'm tired, but done all I can do. I'm ready to not suffer. So going into the surgery, we knew she probably would not survive it. I think I said, whichever one of us dies first. I was like, I could die in a car wreck on the way home from the hospital before you have the surgery. When one of us dies, let's decide on a sign to give each other. And I said, well, mine will be a bird because my name's Robyn. It'll be a robin bird. And she said, well, I guess mine will have to be a dog. And I'm like, well, that's stupid. I mean, I see dogs all the time. Like, how am I going to know? And she said, well, you'll know. I don't know. You'll figure it out. So sure enough, she had surgery a few days later and she passed away. So, and I was really at peace with it because we'd had time, we had a great relationship and we talked about it and I knew she was good with it. And, I, a month or so later, I get an email from, about something I'd ordered and the customer service rep, the girl's name was Mitzi. And I thought, Mitzi was actually a dog that my mother had. Her dad gave her a gift of a puppy when she was pregnant with me. And she named the dog Mitzi. And then her dad dies when I'm 2 weeks old. And she's only 19 when I'm born. So she's young. She lost her dad. He gave her this dog. And this, of all the dogs she had in her life, Mitzi was the most, and she lived to be 14. I grew up with this dog. So much so, it was so significant. When Mitzi died, my dad had to build a box and we encased her body in concrete so that when we moved, we could always take Mitzi with us. So just to tell you how significant Mitzi was. And Mitzi's not a common name.
No.
I went to high school with a Mitzi. I think that's the only Mitzi I ever knew. But anyway, so Mitzi. So I thought, oh, I wonder. So I think the second one was I'm in my house, at the house I lived before this house, that I had lived in for years. And I'm in the bathroom and I happened to look, and in the travertine tile in the shower, there is a definite profile in the veining, in the tile of Mitzi's head. I mean, she's like a little terrier dog. It was her head in the tile. I had never noticed it before, but after you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. I mean, it was so vivid. So I'm like, oh my God, that's the sign she's giving me. It's Mitzi. It's not just a dog. It's Mitzi. So I was satisfied, with that. I don't know how much longer, a month or so, not too terribly long after. I'm with my kids in the village here in St. Simon's Island. We're walking to the pier. We had gotten ice cream. And I thought I saw a quarter on the sidewalk. And I pick it up and it's a tag. It looks like it fell off the dog's collar, but there's no phone number, no nothing. It says Mitzi.
It's
so
crazy.
I'm
crazy.
like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I also talked to Dr. Kraft about is it is about whatever creates ease for you,
right,
in these situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I look back. I'll use a quick example. Like, we're talking about dogs, so it made me think of it. But a dog passes away. It's traumatic for everyone. It's very difficult. There are little family members and it's difficult, right? And so I used to struggle anytime a dog had to be put down. What creates ease for me in that moment is that I did the best thing
For
for
the
that
dog,
dog.
right.
But yes, we still miss it. But what creates ease for me was watching the movie A Dog's Purpose
Oh, yeah.
and thinking that they're coming back and their spirit lives on. So whatever you believe, whatever your religion is, and it doesn't matter. I'm not saying that's the thing you have to think about that creates ease, but find
what gives it
ease
to you. Exactly. Like that was for me. And, and some people are like, because you can talk yourself in or out of any of this. I could have blown off those as not paying any attention, and it had no meaning. It was just a disc on the sidewalk. It was just something in the shower. It was just an email. But I chose to see that as a sign from her, and I truly believe it was. But I had to pick up on that.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing story. And again, that's what I was saying. It's just whatever you're going through, it's recognizing these little God winks and things are put in front of you right when you need them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. Like I think of the other day, I was just feeling a little overwhelmed and I'm not feeling great and my body's not 100%. And, when you're in tune and you're aware, that can really throw you off. And all of a sudden, all my meetings get canceled for the day. All of a sudden, I'm able to go to the chiropractor. My chiropractor is also an energy healer. She's like, I know you need to release energy. And I do the energy release. And then the next day, an acupuncture appointment opens. And it's just amazing to me how these things are just put in front of us when we need them the most. But sometimes people aren't always recognizing it.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look, there are a lot of God winks. Is there anything you would leave folks with? It's really hard to put your book into a couple sentences of advice that you would give people. Let's say I came to you and I said, I'm really struggling, or I've got a relationship that maybe doesn't feel like it's going well. Like, think about if I just asked you for advice, what's the first thing you would say to me?
The thing to realize too is, like you're going through a really hard time, relationship or whatever. And it is what it is. And right now it's not good. The point is not to have pressure to feel ecstatically happy over your not good situation. It is just to find the smallest increment of relief from whether it's, maybe this relationship wasn't for me. You can talk yourself into anything. I compare it to talking a suicide jumper off the ledge. That's the inner talk that you have with yourself is the most important relationship you'll ever have. Make it okay. Make yourself feel better. You can soothe yourself like you would a friend. And that's what you'll have. That's how to get beyond it.
That's great. It's easy. You could do it. I knew it if I phrased it like you were giving me advice, it would be easier for you to do. So last but not least, how can people connect with you? We'll link the link to your book in the show notes and all your info. But what is the best way for folks to connect with you?
I have an Instagram, and I think it's robynbarnhardt.com, I think. I
we'll
tell
link
you,
it in the show notes.
Social media is not my strong suit. I need a social media person.
And is your Instagram is see-through?
It's see-through rose-colored glasses. Yeah, if you'll link it,
I'll link it.
And I've got to revamp some of that. So, but you can message me. You can do whatever. Or
well, I really appreciate you joining me for this. It's been great. I know we could go on longer. I try to be respectful of your time and our listeners. Also, but thank you for inviting me into your home. And for us
thank you for having me. And I hope I didn't ramble on like a crazy person, but I could talk about it all day.
Well, you come back anytime and share your next project.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you. Good to see you, Christy.
That's a wrap for this episode of Ripple Effect Connection. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on limiting beliefs and Robyn's book, See Life Through Rose-Colored Glasses. I know that everyone who listens to that will find something they can take away that will be helpful in their own journey. A big thank you to Robyn for taking the time to join us. Now that you've been inspired, here's my call to action for you. Take a moment to reflect on the insights and the wisdom Robyn shared. Can you apply these lessons to your own health and well-being and personal growth? I'd love to hear from you, so connect with me on social media and let me know what resonated with you. Reach out on Instagram, Whole Health Christy, and I'm happy to continue the conversation. You can also visit my website, christyhugic.com. Next, spread the inspiration. Like, follow, review, share the podcast with others who may benefit from these stories. Stay tuned for the next episode of Ripple Effect Connection. Let's create waves of change together.